Let's start with demand. The law of demand is a foundational concept in economics describing a fundamental human behavior. It simply states that the quantity demanded of a particular good or service varies inversely with its price, meaning as the price increases, the quantity consumers are willing and able to buy decreases. And conversely, as the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases.
This seems intuitively obvious, but it's powerful. Can you walk us through a common example, say bananas, to really illustrate this?
Certainly. Imagine a simple table showing potential prices per kilogram of bananas and the corresponding quantities consumers would demand. If bananas are priced at, say, $5 per kilogram, most people might only buy a small amount, perhaps 1 kilogram, because it's quite expensive. But if the price drops to $1 per kilogram, people might buy much larger quantities, maybe 5 kilograms, because it's so affordable. This inverse relationship is visually represented by a downward sloping demand curve. When the price increases, say from $2 to $4, the movement along the curve is what we call a contraction. In quantity demanded, you move up the curve, and fewer units are purchased. If the price decreases from $4 to $2, it's an expansion in quantity demanded, you move down the curve, and more units are purchased. This inverse relationship exists fundamentally for two main reasons. First, the income effect. As prices fall, your existing income has more purchasing power, making you feel richer and able to afford more. Second, the substitution effect. As the price of a good falls relative to other similar goods, it becomes comparatively cheaper, incentivizing you to substitute it for those other, now more expensive options. So if bananas become very cheap, you might buy fewer apples and more bananas.
Okay, so that's what consumers want to buy, driven by price, affordability, and the availability of alternative. Now, what about what producers want to sell? That's supply.
The law of supply works in the opposite direct direction. It states that the quantity of a particular good or service that sellers are prepared to produce and sell the supply is directly dependent upon the price they will receive for their good or service, assuming all other factors remain constant. So as the price increases, there is an increase in the quantity supplied because it becomes more profitable to produce. And conversely, as the price decreases, there is a reduction in the quantity supplied as profitability diminishes.
So a direct relationship. Using our banana example, how does that look from the producer's perspective?
It's the mirror image of demand. At a very low price, say $1 per kilogram, a banana producer might only be willing to supply 1,000 kilograms because their profit margin is minimal, or they might even be losing money. But if the market price for bananas jumps to $5 per kilogram, they're strongly incentivized to supply a much larger quantity, perhaps 5,000 kilograms, because they can make significantly more profit. This is represented by an upward sloping supply curve. An expansion of supply happens when the price increases, leading producers to offer more. A contraction occurs when the price decreases, leading them to offer less. This direct relationship exists because producers are driven by the profit motive. Higher prices generally mean higher profits, incentivizing them to allocate more resources, time, and effort into producing and selling more of that good.
So consumers want low prices and producers want high prices. How do these two fundamental opposing forces meet in the real world? This must be where the concept of equilibrium comes in, where the market finds its balance.
This is truly where the magic of the market happens, often referred to as the invisible hand at work. While the laws of demand and supply are straightforward individually, it's important to remember that consumers and businesses don't operate in isolation. They're constantly interacting. Consumers need businesses to supply goods and services, and businesses critically need consumers to buy their products. As both buyers and sellers naturally want different things from the market, they engage in a continuous, often implicit, negotiation process to arrive at a price for a product that both consumers and suppliers are happy with. This is called the equilibrium price.
And in a diagram, if you were to plot both the demand curve and the supply curve on the same graph, it would be the precise point where those two curves intersect, right?
Exactly. That intersection point is where the quantity consumers want to buy at a certain price is precisely equal to the quantity producers want to sell at that same price. Let's use our combined banana example. Imagine a graph with the downward sloping demand curve and the upward sloping supply curve. There will be one specific point where they cross. That point indicates the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. At this point, the market is cleared, meaning there are no surpluses or shortages. Now, what happens if the price is above this equilibrium price? If bananas are priced too high, say $4 per kilogram, when the equilibrium is $2.50, producers will offer many bananas because they see high profits. But consumers will demand far fewer at that price. This creates a glut or a surplus where the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. What do sellers do in this situation? They're sitting on excess stock, so they are compelled to lower prices to attract buyers and clear their inventory. This downward pressure on price pushes the market back towards equilibrium.
And what about if the price is below equilibrium? Like if bananas are only $1 per kilogram when they should be $2.50.
Conversely, if the price is below equilibrium, say at $1 per kilogram, consumers will demand a huge quantity because it's such a bargain. But producers, seeing very little profit, will only be willing to supply a small amount. This creates a shortage where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. What happens then? Consumers who really want bananas but can't find them will be willing to pay more. This scarcity allows sellers to raise prices as there's more demand than supply. This upward pressure on price pushes the market back towards equilibrium. This natural dynamic where markets self-correct towards that balance point is why it's often called the invisible hand. It explains why prices fluctuate and how markets adjust, aiming for that perfect alignment where buyer and seller desires perfectly meet. While the model suggests a rapid adjustment, in reality, various factors can slow or even temporarily prevent markets from reaching perfect equilibrium.